Kun's section will be short. This is not due to a lack of care, but simply because he is primarily a vocalist and his dancing reflects that. The first thing I notice with Kun is that there is no sense of ease in his movement. Everything is very forceful. He doesn't have any major coordination issues, and he's precise, but he would need to hone some kind of foundational technique in order to overcome the impression that he's struggling with the choreography. Right off the bat, I know I need to reassert that this ranking is for open style and or street dance. While I don't intend to draw strict divisions between styles, it is factual to say that certain styles have more family resemblance than others, and therefore can be assessed by a set of general standards. Winwin's background in Chinese classical dance falls outside these boundaries, which is why I cannot assess his skill in that area, and also why he struggles with NCT's choreography. Once again, I urge you to go watch the suggested videos to understand my ranking system and the relevant dance genres better. Winwin is very stiff in open style choreography. He struggles to perform relaxed isolations. This is a common trait among those with a background in lifted, tension-based styles. Though he still lacks a bit of smoothness, he is notably better at contemporary, and some of his acrobatics are super impressive. I want to commend Winwin for improving his sharpness and bounce since debut. While Doyoung's dance technique isn't that developed, he's a good performer, and he does have some movement qualities worth mentioning. First, he's got consistent shoulder locks. He overuses them, but they come in handy when the choreography calls for such a move. Next, he's actually quite precise with his footwork accents during bouncy sections. He's got a bit of a house groove, also known as jacking, in him too. Xiaojun has good power projection. He has timing issues, but he's clearly hearing the music, so those should go away once his technique improves. The areas that could use the most improvement are his footwork and general awkwardness. There's not any fluidity in his movement right now, which is a quality that could massively and positively transform his dancing. I've said this before and I'll say it again, Taeil could be a really good dancer if he put in the effort. Right now, he frequently falls off count and generally lacks energy, but his locks, isolations, and musicality are very clear in some places. He's also got the short limbs, long torso physique of dancers such as Jeno, which makes it very easy for him to get down to the floor quickly. It also makes his stomps very defined. To be honest, the main detractor in Taeil's dancing is his obvious lack of confidence. This is something that distinguishes NCT's weaker dancers from 17's, for example. In 17, even the members I ranked lowest have a level of self-assuredness, conviction, and conscious attention to musicality. They use every bit of their technique when they dance. NCT on the other hand seems to have a more strict division between the role of vocalist and dancer. This isn't a bad thing, necessarily, but it means that the vocalists of NCT tend not to put much effort into their dancing, and if they develop their technique over time, they don't try much to develop their physical artistry. You'll hear me mention several other vocalist dancers as I go up NCT's ranks. Overall, I feel like Taeil's current level could change a lot with only a shift in mentality. Hendery is a really interesting mover. Upon first glance, his dancing just looks soft. This softness makes his musicality unclear. He avoids using groove even when the choreography calls for it. At the same time, he keeps a notably low center of gravity. His lower body can provide such a solid base that it looks like he's sitting on a chair. In fact, one of the most fascinating things about Hendery is the way in which he manages to keep his hips perfectly level while executing leg work that most people would take on a diagonal. His locks are for the most part too loose, but during Bad Alive, he was able to create some good punctuated movement in the crumping-inspired sections. In fact, from my uneducated non-crumper perspective, Hendery's combination of level hips, no groove, avoidance of diagonals, low center of gravity, and leg projections that move completely independent of his upper body, seems to make him a potential good fit for the style, provided he gains, and learns how to apply, physical strength. Chenle seems to be positioned as primarily a vocalist, and like Taeil, his dancing is not a notable outlet for his artistry. His technique is quite even across the board, neither tension-based nor super groovy, but he's a very sharp dancer with good locks. His legs are a weak point, and his movements right now tend to be too loose, especially in the arms. Johnny has undoubtedly improved over the past couple years. His coordination and timing in particular have seen some major improvements. Johnny's basic hip-hop technique is there, and his groove is only inconsistent because of a simple and easily fixable lack of further hip-hop training. Now, I'd say the biggest issue with his technique is his hunched chest and shoulders. Correcting this problematic alignment will not only free up his upper body, but also make him look more confident. Despite being a good performer, Johnny can look awkward at times. This isn't due to any issue in his facial expressions or head angles, but rather that by hunching himself inwards, he gives off an impression of wanting to be smaller. Jungwoo has a nice sharp and energetic quality to his dancing. His proportions make for great angles and good footwork. He has clear locks. In creating this sharp quality, Jungwoo ends up carrying a lot of tension in his shoulders and neck. He also has some timing issues. As I mentioned, Jungwoo has very good proportions. He doesn't need to try hard to create nice shapes. Maybe because the external component of dancing comes easily to him, Jungwoo's dancing can look a little immature, by which I mean he doesn't seem to be thinking about how to fill out his movement internally with isolations, positional stretch, or groove. If Jungwoo starts working on different dynamic coordinations, he will find ways to create visual intrigue other than sharpness, and will therefore be able to release the excess tension in his chest-up region. Sungchan is a very obvious example of how weaknesses and strengths are simply flip sides of each other. He's perhaps the most rigid dancer in NCT, and as an extension of that innate quality, his locks are some of the best in NCT. Rather than trying to massively reform his quality of movement, he should focus on nurturing this aspect. Lucas is a very big guy, so he has a lot of physical area to work with. My outsider guess is that he doesn't do much dance training outside of learning NCT's choreography since he's naturally charismatic with good dynamics, but he's uneven and doesn't know how to fully utilize his large frame without looking hunched over. He also has some pretty noticeable issues with rushing. Lucas falls into the trap common for tall dancers where he keeps his legs too close together, forcing him to overbend his knees, which compounds the issue of him looking like he occupies a smaller amount of space than he is meant to. Lucas shows a lot of potential to me because unlike a lot of K-pop vocalists who look like they've prioritized becoming clean before developing groove, texture, or anything that would help their dancing stand out, Lucas dances hard enough to communicate a desire to hold attention with his body. As an idol, his main issue right now is his inability to adapt himself for the group. However, I appreciate this individual flair because it's something different in K-pop. It would be even better if he could learn to combine and switch between synchronized and stylistic dancing. Yuta's movement is distinctive because he has the physical strength to use a lot of resistance. We all remember his iconic jump in Black on Black. However, Yuta has not learned how to allow for groove and relaxation amongst all this physical strength. Out of all the members in NCT, Yuta is most prone to disappearing leg work and hip isolations due to constant tension. He has a noticeable habit of hunching his shoulders and jutting his jaw forward, and is unable to let his chest extend naturally for waves. Some of his executions are very musical and connected, but Yuta needs to learn how to diversify his dynamics, not relying only on muscle force. Jaemin has a rather long arm-torso combination compared to his legs, and perhaps in part due to his unusual proportions, he has developed distinctive body coordination. Jaemin might be the only dancer I've seen who uses his arms not just to balance but as a plumb bob of sorts. Though he can look awkward or floppy at times, I appreciate that he keeps a level of relaxation through his body. It allows him to fling and lock his limbs freely to a musical effect, while keeping his body relatively upright. When taking all these things into account, I come to the conclusion that Jaemin would really suit working. His timing issues can get a bit distracting, and he can do a little too much personal arrangement of the choreography at times, but on the whole, Jaemin is someone with the potential to polish a unique way of moving. Jaehyun's movement is not particularly groovy or powerful, but he's very clean. He's an incredibly balanced dancer with a great grasp of opposition. He's able to create shapes that are either completely neutral or rotated from top to bottom. He's really good at traveling as well. His alignment gives him easy leg work, particularly knee projections. Jaehyun's got understated, but noteworthy musicality. Especially when watched alone, Jaehyun looks like he's living in the music, rather than trying to put a bunch of stuff on top of it. Technically speaking, his footwork is probably the area that could use the most work. As I mentioned earlier, his balanced alignment and ease of hip rotations let his legs move freely, but his lack of groove and difficulty coordinating power in his lower body works against him. While his flowy isolations are great, his locks could use some development as well. Jaehyun's biggest weakness at the moment is his inconsistency. Plenty of idols change their dancing by venue, sometimes to accommodate singing, and sometimes due to other external factors, costumes, slippery floors, hot lighting, etc. But Jaehyun's technique can drop drastically on occasion, shortcutting and rushing in obvious ways. This tendency of his is very prominent in his studio chum fancams as well, which implies that the live singing aspect has minimal relation. I can't tell you exactly what's going on because I'm just an outsider, but I postulate that Jaehyun's technique is simply not yet refined enough to allow for a confident performance every time. Jaehyun needs ideal conditions, particularly in regards to clothing, in order to perform well. This is a normal point along a dancer's journey. Personally, I notice that I never do as well practicing on my own as I do in lessons with a teacher and an atmosphere that helps me dance full out, especially when it comes to styles I have less training in. At his best, I stand by my earlier decision to rank Jaehyun as one of the strongest dancers in NCT. Yangyang instinctively knows how to drop his hips down and back, which punctuates his stomps. He has great awareness of parallel leg alignment, which makes his rotations clean. He has a lot of mobility in his torso, though its application is a bit inconsistent at the moment. Yangyang's movements can get too forceful, but I think if he can combine the big, dynamic leg work he is already capable of with smoother full body coordination, he could become a consistent pick for dance breaks. Renjun is an incredibly detailed and sharp dancer. If you're ever confused about the correct timing or angles of a section, especially a fast one that gets messy with the other members, you should watch him at half speed. He's more fluid than powerful, but his locks are actually very clean. His shoulder isolations are great. To me, he looks like he'd really suit all different types of choreography within the jazz hip-hop realm. He has really nice lines and angles, and an unusually open upper back extension for a man, especially one who dances mostly commercial hip-hop choreography. He has good balance, and has a good connection between his abdominal muscles and legs. After joining NCT, Renjun was made into more of a vocalist, so he ended up cultivating accuracy in dance over groove or any other distinctive quality of movement. His face is also a little blank. However, Renjun has a lot of compelling characteristics, and I think given even a little time to properly lean into his dance strengths, he could start pulling attention as a unique dancer within the K-pop industry. Taeyong is a great performer. His coordination is very consistent, no matter the move. He has good isolations and locks, and is able to fully utilize his flexibility to extend or connect moves. He's clearly spent a lot of time honing a set of skills that are useful for dance break choreography, such as dolphins and body waves. His leg angles are clear. Overall, the thing that holds Taeyong back is how incredibly tense he is while dancing. There's no moment of relaxation. This restricts his hip movements, footwork, and extensions. He doesn't ever drop his lower body, and his shoulders become very hunched. I as the viewer feel constricted watching him. That sort of thing can only be solved by loosening up. Jeno is a good performer, and a powerful dancer with balanced technique. He's clearly very physically fit, and so that gives him good rebound in his kicks, and a lot of height in his jumps. Geno's gotten a lot better since debut, but he still has a bit of an unpolished way of dancing. He can lose a lot of details or his movement can look sparse, by which I mean he doesn't fill in the gaps of simple choreography with body control. Jeno is one of NCT's only two groovy dancers, and that adds flair to his musicality. I like how he clearly pays attention to lyrics as well. It's honestly a shame people don't talk about his musicality more. First and foremost, Haechan is an amazing performer, eye-catching and artistic. He's skilled at using his head to add flourishes, and he extends his body to add a lyrical quality not present in the rest of the members. Speaking of Haechan's unique movement, I got into K-pop back when I was still doing ballet, and during this period of my life, I had a pretty major Haechan phase. Back then, I had absolutely no knowledge of street dance techniques, so Haechan's attention to line was a common point that allowed me to apply my ballet lens to appreciate open-style choreography. I've since gotten more serious about all kinds of non-ballet related dancing, particularly house, which has given me the comprehension necessary to fully enjoy groovy techniques, but I continue to hold appreciation for Haechan as a sort of gateway dancer for me. One of the most striking things about Haechan is that he extends arm and leg movements which a typical street dance or open-style dancer would keep bent. He keeps his hips fairly lifted. He also keeps his arms in alignment with his chest. This way of moving has both positives and negatives. On one hand, it allows Haechan to dance with a sense of elegance and elongation that is impossible to achieve for members like Mark or Taeyong. However, it blocks him off from explosive power and bounce which are only available when you keep your limbs bent and your body slightly pitched. The fact that he keeps a level of tension in his body at all times makes it difficult for him to express full mobility in his joints as well. Haechan expresses his great musicality through crisp movements rather than going for force. He has good isolations and clean stops. He is one of NCT's best members when it comes to turns, jumps, and floor. His gliding footwork is super smooth. In general, I think hip-hop training would give him more versatility. While I do like his current style, he looks stiff during groovy choreography. Personally, I want to see him choreograph something. We'd get to see him apply his musicality in a context where he makes all the choices, and he could tailor the steps to suit his vocabulary. To close off this section, I'd like to shout out Shaky Raindrops video on Haechan. There's a reason why Haechan tends to attract ballet people, and she explains it really well. Ten has beautiful lines and is a truly great performer. He is very fluid in both traveling and step execution. The main thing holding him back, at least while his job puts hip-hop based choreography at the forefront, is a lack of training in foundational street dance genres. I know his background is not in ballet, but he has a lot of what I would describe as balletic habits, a tendency to flow through counts or be slightly early, a disinclination to drop one's hips, and knees kept outwards. To expand on that last point, compare Ten's footwork to Lucas here. You can see that he loses a lot of clarity because he doesn't want to operate in parallel. These strengths and weaknesses make Ten strong at more fluid open-style choreography, but not so much at choreography that requires a hip-hop base. First off, Jisung's body control is seriously impressive. He clearly has a popping background, and he fully applies that to glides, isolations, or pops in the choreography. He moves with a type of ease that comes from knowing that your body will express what's in your head if you let it. His dynamics shine in a rhythmic stuff where the goal is to hit specific beats or lyrics. The thing that's missing in Jisung's dancing is a sense of release. He's not particularly fluid or groovy, and so everything he does looks tightly wound. I don't expect Jisung to suddenly gain flexibility, because that's just not his body type, but using more bounce in his dancing would automatically make him appear more relaxed. I find Jisung to be a very alluring performer. A huge part of that can be attributed to the balance Jisung strikes between an internal and external performance. In other words, Jisung spends about an equal amount of time enjoying the physical experience of dancing within himself as he does projecting energy out to the audience. Most idols I've seen, referring to both dancers and non-dancers, feel such pressure to be communicating with the fans at all times that they don't look to be really feeling their movement. With Jisung, you see him add in little freestyles, and break eye contact with the camera when he pops, and even make faces of concentration at times. What's most interesting to me is that you can see him cultivate this skill over the years since his debut. Jisung was only 14 years old when he started promoting with NCT Dream. When you look at his fancoms from Chewing Gum, you see a bit of a frantic performer, understandably. He barely looked away from the camera, and he definitely didn't seem at home on stage like he does now. I'd say Jisung's unique style of performing started to emerge most obviously during Boom, when he was 17. Personally, I see Jisung as more of a solo performer than an ensemble dancer. He's similar to Jaemin in the sense that he is a popping-based dancer who takes music slightly early to convey speed. My favorite videos from Jisung are still the solos he did on Dancing High along with his performance of Foreign in Millennium Dance Complex. Despite the atrocious video quality, you can hear and see that people are living for Jisung's interpretation of Brian's choreography. There's few things as fun as watching someone with strong hits in person. The best quality about Mark's movement is how groovy he is. Groove is what allows Mark to look interesting even when he's turning down his energy, and when he turns the energy up, he brings a level of explosive power impossible for the tension-based dancers of NCT, who are by far the majority. No one else in NCT dances with much groove, with the exception of Jeno. Mark has generally great footwork, relaxed movements, interesting dynamics, and is overall fun to watch. His personality flourishes beautifully in both choreography and freestyling. He has a lot of power in his hip isolations which come from the same drop your weight, drop your hips action that groove requires. While Mark excels when the steps are big, powerful, and entirely reliant on groove, he hasn't completely honed his isolations, a fact that gives him some difficulty in static or body control-oriented choreography. In particular, he struggles with compound isolations or when isolations get combined with a groovy step of somewhat unconventional coordination. He also has pretty extreme C-shaped posture. His tucked hips are an issue in particular, as they push his weight over his toes and affect his footwork, turns, and floor work. These are the reasons why Riena's choreography is such a struggle for him. The fundamental building blocks of her choreography are a neutral torso alignment, a unique side-to-side groove, and an array of complex isolations layered on top of that groove. On the other hand, Mark is absolutely incredible in choreography like Lemonade, Beatbox, and Gimme Gimme. Lemonade in particular is one of the most captivating performances I've ever seen from an idol. Finally, let's give a shout out to Mark's expertly timed glances. They are famous in the fandom for a good reason. Shotaro's technique is one of the most well-rounded in K-pop. My favorite thing about his dancing is the ease with which he's able to coordinate compound isolations. Shotaro is less of a hard hitter, and more of someone who emphasizes flow and shape through his movement. In my opinion, he suits dancehall-inspired choreography the best, despite executing it with a lot more muscle engagement than is typical of dancehall dancers. The one technical critique I will give is that Shotaro keeps his knees and feet facing outwards for most of his dancing. This placement is great for stability, and that's beneficial for Shotaro's proclivity towards smoothness over groove, but it does make his leg angles unclear at times. An additional result is that his footsteps look placed rather than dropped, which causes his footwork to lack the accent that groove-based dancers have. I want to talk a bit about a trend you see with backup dancers turned idols in K-pop, including Shotaro. As a backup dancer, the first priority is being clean in your movements. There can be no excess, because that would distract from the artists themselves. For example, let's compare Hyunjin to the backup dancer next to him in Hard Carry. If we glance over to Shotaro during this section, we can see that despite the hard-hitting song, his face is nearly as neutral as that of the backup dancer. Former backup dancers, such as Lee No from Stray Kids and Yeonjun from Kept Wonder, tend to have a lot of trouble freeing themselves from the way they've learned to tamp down on their individuality. They've often also not been trained to dance for a camera, so that audience connection can be lacking. To Shotaro's credit, he has improved a lot from his early stages. First and foremost, Shotaro comes off to me as someone who is truly invested in dance, and I'm glad he's absorbing aspects of idol performance with an open mind. He's still got some ways to go before he can compete with the performers of NCT, but I have a lot of faith in his growth based on what he's shown so far. In my opinion, NCT is one of the most interesting and most capable dance groups in K-pop. All 23 members were better than I initially thought they were. Looking at the units individually, NCT Dream is the clear standout. Aside from Chenle, who can still undoubtedly hold his own, every member of that group has developed a unique way of dancing. Mark with groove, Jisung with body control and pops, Haechan with lines and subtle musicality, Jeno with power, and Renjun with unbeatable precision. Wavy is quite clearly the weakest dance unit, which I find to be an unfortunate indication of SM's lack of equal investment in their Chinese subunits. More than any glaring issues in technique, what bothers me about Wavy is their distracting lack of synchronization. They don't dance as a team. Looking through the 23 members of NCT makes blatantly clear that the ratio of tension-based to groovy dancers is quite skewed. Mark and Jeno are the only 2 out of 23 members with a throughline of groovy movement, though Johnny, Chenle, and Doyoung show potential. SM clearly goes for accuracy before an embodied, rhythm-based way of moving. On one hand, this makes sure that even the weakest dancers are relatively clean. However, it also seems to funnel even the members who have a passion for dance into becoming instruments who can execute choreography but can't move beyond that. It's striking to compare the NCT members to NMIXX, who started releasing content only a little over a year ago, but whose members have already shown notable improvement. It's worth considering if the reason for such a disparity is the training and dance philosophy that exists within each company. Speaking entirely personally, NCT has a lot of dancers I admire. Mark in particular is one of my favorite dancers, period. While my thoughts about their current direction of choreography are not completely positive, I will always remember that the choreographers behind NCT's projects have given us some of the most creative, fun choreography I've seen in K-pop. There's a reason why NCT is the only group I've ever really stand. Hope you enjoyed this 40-minute deep dive into each member's dancing as much as I did.